Hi guys, welcome to episode 2 of the No BS advice helpline that we've set up here. We've had quite the response, which is great. The more questions get asked, I'll work through, I'll answer them. I'm glad that people are enjoying it, thinking that it's a good idea. You know, if it helps somebody directly, then I feel like I've accomplished something for the day, which is good, and we don't need all the faff and bollocks that you see on other channels. So today's question, asked by Andrew Velasquez. Help, just got what I assume to be a Central American boa, and he seems to have a respiratory infection, and he's also very restless, constantly moving about in his enclosure. He is 3/4 feet and was kept in a 5 to 10 gallon tank his whole life. What do I do? What you mean, apart from kick the previous owner's ass? I fed him, he ate fine, it's only been 2 days, please, what should I do? Okay. Right. The issue that we have with rescuing animals, or especially if people pay for them as well, because they feel guilt, they'll buy an animal that's ill to remove it from its situation. But I always struggle with that concept, simply because when you remove it from that situation, what you do is enable the dickhead keeper that had it that way before to buy something else to abuse. The book will stop with that one, hopefully, if they can't get rid of it or get shut of it. If you rescued it for free and you took it in, that's a different kettle of fish. But if you paid money for it, you need your bumps feeling. That's the truth, bro. Sorry. Normally, if an animal is cold or kept in really crappy conditions with maybe no heat, the animal outwardly seems okay when you first get it, and its tongue will be flicking, there won't be too many problems. What happens is, when we rapidly heat them up, they then foam up, and the RI becomes infinitely worse. The bubbling, the gaping, the noises, when you can hear them breathing and all this sort of stuff, and the frog throat. Their lungs seem to foam and all the liquid seems to form, and all this lung butter seems to be in there, and it's dormant when they're cold, but when they warm up it comes out. What we would have to hope is that it's an upper respiratory, which is more easily treated than a lower respiratory. Either way, it's a trip to the vets. That's the shortcut. You're going to need some broad spectrum antibiotics. They may take a swab out of the glottis to use on culture and sensitivity, where they spread the saliva on agar to see if they can get a reading on what drugs are going to be most useful. But Baytril or Fortum, which are two that are used in the UK, broad spectrum. Fortum you keep frozen, defrost at use. The dosages I'm not going to give because it's not appropriate, I'm not a vet. But that would be what we would do. As a backup or complementary to this, what a lot of people do is use the nebulizers, and they use saline water. So I'll get a rub or Tupperware container or a poly box, cut a hole that's tight fitting around the nozzle, which has got the reservoir of saline water in, and the breathing apparatus that we'd normally put on our face for human use. Take that off, there's usually a nozzle, we can extend that somehow, put it through a hole in the poly box or Tupperware container, and run it for 20 minutes with, say, 5 ml of saline in, and the snake's put in there, it's breathing in the saline vapor, which helps to bring up and also dry out any of the mucus that's present. People do try to shortcut going to the vets with RIs and just using nebulizers, but if it's an upper respiratory you'll get shut of it. If it's a lower respiratory you've got no hope. You need the broad spectrum antibiotics to kick its arse and start to take effect pretty quick. So that would be my first protocol. If it is roaming incessantly, it would be suggestive of either temperatures being erroneous or that there's mites. If the animal's been mistreated, kept in a 5 to 10 gallon tank, not been looked after, then mites are probably my go-to thing. If it's a relatively fresh infestation, you might not necessarily see the adults, but it's irritated, it's itchy, and it's not happy at all. So, another option, of course, is you've just put it in a brand new tank. It's roaming because it's looking around its new enclosure. So I would be checking for mites. I would probably frontline it, or maybe get some Taurus mites as part of the course. I would maybe even consider, if we're worried that it's run down, using something like Reptiboost, which is a probiotic that we could soak it in 2 or 3 times, which has got electrolyzed salts and amino acids that are lost through stress and illness, to try and rebuild them to get its immuno response up. I would keep it in a relatively sterile enclosure. I wouldn't have loads of crap everywhere, because it's just going to be chucking up this phlegm and all these bubbles and mucus and putting it everywhere. So whilst it's ill, we probably need to give it a bit of a triage set up to keep it okay to begin with, and maybe after 3-4 months we'll review that. Plus any pathogens from the substrates or branches or plants that you have put in there can affect its immuno response. So realistically, we need to take it back to basics. The principles of triage for any ill snake are the same as what I discussed for the emerald tree boa, so hopefully that will help. So yeah, I mean, what are we ticking off here? You assume to be Central American. Why? You've not explained why. Is it because of its dark coloration, or its saddles, or its size? Generally they can be a bit more arsey than commons, so that can be a trigger. Generally Central Americans carry a lot more melanin, a lot more of the dark pigments, particularly Mexicans, El Salvador's, Croalcays, that sort of thing. The respiratory, yeah, we need to know whether it's upper or lower. I would go to the vets. If you bought it, the fuck are you doing buying an animal with respiratory? Seriously. All you've done is just give them money to do it to another snake, you know. And yeah, what do I do? So yeah, I hope you gave the previous owner a piece of your mind. He's fed, that's a good sign. Alternatively, you could get a syringe and fine needle, and you could inject the Reptiboost directly into a mouse or rat's stomach for it to eat, which will help to boost it up. Maybe keep it slightly warmer than you normally would and more humid than you normally would. This is to try and aid its immuno response, and to also try and get that mucus up off its chest. They can't cough properly, they have trouble getting that mucus up and off their chest. We keep them nice and humid so it stays lubricated. There's 2 rules of thought. People say dry them out, some people say wet them. I say wet them because logic dictates that we want that mucus in a fluid form where it can be coughed up. We do not want it sat there, just sat in the bottom of the lungs, not able to be cleared. That's my opinion. There'll be other people, no doubt, who will disagree. If anybody else has got any tips for Andrew, feel free to put them down. We're here to help you, help everybody else. Maybe somebody else has got a similar problem to what you've had, and we just want to try and make this snake's future as bright as possible. Thermostatic control. Definitely use a bulb or a ceramic bulb. Do not use a heat pad. For a big snake that's 3 or 4 foot long with plenty of body mass, heat pads are useless. So make sure it's heated from above, it's breathing warm air, it's not sat on a warm surface and breathing room temperature air, because that's where the RI came from. So yeah, it's tropical, it needs warm air. Anything within the tropics I tend to use a bulb on, because I want them to be breathing air that is commensurate to the biome that we're trying to create, not just a warm surface at 32 degrees where it'll just sit and get constipated. I think that's about it really. Reptiboost, vets, treat it for mites, double check your temperatures, make sure you're heating it from above, keep it upwards of about 33 degrees, 34 degrees at the hotspot. Bear in mind, all antibiotics were originally designed for mammalian use, and their active range is 37 degrees Celsius. Now, we can't get a boa to 37 degrees because we'll kill it. But what we need to do is make sure that we keep it maybe just slightly warmer than we normally would, because it's going to give the antibiotics a greater chance of taking hold. What people don't allow for is the fact that some of these cooler species, we're really knackered sometimes because the antibiotics just won't work at 26, 27 degrees. They won't kick in because they're designed to work at 37. They have this active metabolism themselves. So that you can nebulize also using F10, which is a disinfectant available in the UK. So you mix that with the saline, and that's the SC, which is a sterilizer, which has got an antibiotic property which can help to try and clear up infection as well. So those are my tips immediately off the top of my head to try and deal with a boa that's maybe had a bit of a shit innings thus far. I hope it works out. Keep us posted how things go. I hope that this was of use. I will answer another question hopefully tomorrow as long as I get time, and we'll just keep this ball rolling. visit the website www.snakesandadders.co.uk to see what we're all about. Cheers.